Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, are you ready for Daily Dose Radio? We're going to switch it up here just a little bit today. And instead of me doing 2 verses today, I'm just going to read verse 126, so that tomorrow we can treat 127 and 128. So if you have your Bible handy, you grab it. We're going to go ahead and open our Bibles up and read today from Psalm 119, verse 126. And remember that this is my translation. Time for the Lord to act. They violate your law. All right, now that is the verse, and notice it's very to the point. The very first phrase is very curt. It's 3 words in the Hebrew. Time for the Lord, and then the Lord is the second word, for the Lord to act. And we have 2 prepositions there, for and to, so there's more than 3 words. There's 5 words, actually. Time to act for the Lord, or time for the Lord to act. That's that first phrase. Well, why is that? Why does the Lord need to act? Why would the psalmist say, Lord, you need to rise up and do something? And by the way, this is that same word that we talked about just a little while ago in verse 124. In verse 124, it was do with, or deal with, or create with, or make with your servant. And we settled on the translation of deal. It's a very good translation. So this is that same word, but now instead of dealing with the servant, it's time for the Lord to deal. It's time for the Lord to do. It's time for him to act. So, and that, I guess act really could have been a good translation for 124. Act with your servant. Maybe not. Anyway, so that's what we're dealing with here, is that it's time for the Lord to act, and then we get the reason why. They violate your law. So who's the they? Who's he talking about here? Well, if you go back and you look through this section, this division, you have the evildoers, who are insolent oppressors, and they're the ones that are violating the law. And then down at the very end of this chapter, or this division, we have the false way. So all of these things put together make up that they that we're talking about. Those oppressors, the insolent, the false, those guys that are oppressing the psalmist. They violate the law. One way in which they violate the law is that they're against the psalmist here. He's trying to follow the law. He's trying to live according to faith. He's trying to be obedient. Remember, he says in this psalm of himself, I am your servant. So he has a confession. He has a testimony, and his testimony is a good one, that he serves the Lord. Now he says to the Lord, it's time to act. Have you ever prayed that prayer, by the way? Have you ever said to the Lord, okay, it's too late now. The time for waiting is over. It's now time to act. And of course, we can think about what the preacher wrote in Ecclesiastes. There's a time for this, and there's a time for that. And he gives us that whole list of things that it's time for. Well, one of these days, it's going to be time for judgment. And where will you be on that day? Some people whittle away and while away the hours, and they never make a decision. They never come to the Lord. They disregard, they disrespect, they rebel, and wickedly intend to do everything they can against the gospel message. Well, here, the psalmist is saying, okay, it's time now, no longer for waiting, it's time now for action. So, Lord, please act. Act against those who are disregarding, those who are violating, those who are false, those who are insolent, those who are rebellious, those who oppress the righteous. It's time to act. We could pray that very prayer today, couldn't we? Because there are so many Christians who are losing their lives simply because they believe in Jesus. And maybe the church could rise up on its knees and pray this prayer. Lord, it's time to act. They violate your law. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow. We're going to look at verses 127 and 128 on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.